Thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the first board meeting in September. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is situated upon the traditional territory, the Akwesasne Mohawk, keepers of the Eastern Door for the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy, and I'd also recognize the enduring presence of the first people of this land. So welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to look back and see the gallery full. I can't tell you how much it means to us as a Board of Trustees to have you here. As I said earlier, we canceled the draw. Just kidding you. It is nice to have you here, and it means a lot to look back and see such dedicated administrators sitting in this room. So we've got principals, vice principals from across the board. We certainly appreciate the work that you have just put in the first week or so of school. We know it's not been an easy week, so to take some time out to be with us tonight, we really appreciate that. So thank you so much. I also want to welcome some people to the table. When I look around, there are new faces. I'll start with the trustees. We've got our new trustee, Ryan Jacobs. Welcome to the board. We've got our student trustee, Marshall Wilson. And when I look down at the senior end, I see two new superintendents. We have Superintendent Barrett and Superintendent Ferguson. Welcome to this table, and welcome to the board. And I know that you're going to enjoy every moment that we share at this table, because it's always kind of fun. So it's more than kind of fun. It's a great team to be with. I want to welcome all the trustees back. I hope you've all had a good summer and rested and ready for what lies before us. So I'm going to ask us to stand for the singing of O Canada. And before I ask the director to do O Canada principals and vice principals, I'm not sure how long you're going to stay around tonight, so normally what I'm going to say now, I'd say in my closing comments, part of it anyways, is could you go back to your schools, tell your staff, tell your custodial staff how proud we are of the work that they put in during the summer to make those schools ready for the kids. There's no question there was a lot of work, and Jeremy, your team did a lot of work this summer, a lot of last minute work. Yet the schools were wide open first day of school, and your staff embraced them, and it's a testament to our staff. It's a testament to our custodial staff as well. The schools looked amazing. Please pass on from us how much we appreciated the work that they did. Okay. Thank you. Director, can you do a roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is our roll call for our meeting of 13 September 2017. Trustee Armour.
Present.
First Vice Chair Karkner.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan. Student Trustee Marshall Wilson.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda item 3.02 to 3.03, September 13, 2017, as submitted. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Wendy McPherson. I'll ask you to cast your votes, please.
I'm still voting.
Pardon me?
I haven't had this thing on since June, so I'm still
Okay.
voting.
You're in favor, I'm assuming,
Myself included.
and that carries. Thank you very much. Trustee Jacobs? You're in favor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, we're going to be moving on to two ratification of appointments. This is always a very exciting part of any board meeting to get an opportunity to officially welcome our new members to the board. So we're going to begin with the ratification of the appointment of our Akwesasne First Nation representative to the board, Ryan Jacobs. So I'm going to turn this over to the director.
Thank you. If Trustee Jacobs would come and join me down this way, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, through you, as you know, all duly appointed trustees for public boards of education in Ontario, publicly funded boards of education in Ontario, are required to make a declaration and an oath of office. So we have here this evening Trustee Ryan Jacobs. So I'll ask Mr. Jacobs if he could please repeat after me. I, Ryan Jacobs, solemnly declare that
I, Ryan Jacobs, solemnly declare that
I am not disqualified under any act from being a member of the Upper Canada District School Board,
I am not disqualified under any act from being a member of the Upper Canada District School Board,
and that I accept my position on the Upper Canada District School Board with full respect for the people,
and I accept that my position on the Upper Canada District School Board with full respect for the people
of our community, and I will strive to serve the people of Akwesasne faithfully, honestly, and with integrity.
for the people of our community, and I will strive to serve the people of Akwesasne faithfully, honestly, and with integrity.
I will truly, faithfully, impartially, and to the best of my ability
I will truly, faithfully, impartially, and to the best of my ability
execute the office of member, and that I have not received
execute the office of member, and that I have not received
and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof
and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof
for the exercise of any partiality or malversations or other undue execution of the said office,
for the exercise of any partiality or malversations or other undue execution of the said office,
and that I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect,
and that I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect,
as required by and in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
as required by and in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
I will faithfully and impartially carry out the duties of my office
I will faithfully and impartially carry out the duties of my office
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
and I will strive to promote the best interests of the people of Akwesasne.
and I will strive to promote the best interests of the people of Akwesasne.
In performing my duties as a member of the Upper Canada District School Board,
In performing my duties as a member of the Upper Canada District School Board,
I will strive to use my best efforts in doing what I believe
I will strive to do my best efforts in doing what I believe
to be in the best interest of its students, teachers, staff, and administration.
to be in the best interests of its students, teachers, staff, and administration.
I'll see if you could sign here. Trustee Jacobs. Here. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'd like to confirm that the declaration and oath of office of trustee Ryan Jacobs.
So, I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board ratify the appointment of Ryan Jacobs as First Nation representative of the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education, AMBI, on the board to sit as a full member from September the 2nd, 2017 to November the 30th, 2022, subject to the provisions of the Education Act, Section 188, and Regulation 462/97, moved by Trustee Karkner, seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. And cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. Welcome to the board. Okay, the next is the oath and declaration of our student trustee, Marshall Wilson. So, Marshall, I'll ask you to go back with the director.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, our student trustee under the regulations of the Province of Ontario is also required to take a declaration, an oath of office, an oath of allegiance as part of his duties to participate in our board. So I'm going to ask Trustee Wilson if he would please repeat after me. I declare that I am not disqualified under any act from being a student trustee on the Upper Canada District School Board.
I am not disqualified under any act from being a student trustee on the Upper Canada District School Board.
I will truly, faithfully, impartially, and to the best of my ability
I will truly, faithfully, impartially, and to the best of my ability
execute the office of student trustee,
execute the office of student trustee,
and that I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof
and that I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof
for the exercise of any partiality or malversation or other undue execution
for the exercise of any partiality, malversation, or other undue execution
of the said office, and that I will, to the best of my ability,
of the said office, and that I will, to the best of my ability,
endeavor to represent the interests of the students in the Upper Canada District School Board.
endeavor to represent the interests of the student in the Upper Canada District School Board.
And secondly, Mr. Chair, there's also the oath of allegiance. So if you would repeat after me. I, Marshall Wilson,
I, Marshall Wilson,
do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
I do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II,
to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to present to you Trustee Marshall Wilson, who has completed his declaration and oath of office. Oh, you got one more there.
Welcome, Student Trustee Wilson. Okay, moving on to the next item on the list is it's an update of the graduation rate that we have on our board. And this has been obviously a focus of our board for a long time, but it's now coming on, the report's coming from the trustee work plan, which ultimately became part of the director's work plan. So this is the first of many reports that we're going to be getting in many different areas throughout the year. So I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Phil Dawes and Superintendent David Coombs.
Thank you, Chair. I am pleased to have this opportunity with my colleague Superintendent Coombs to kick off the year with this presentation as it relates to graduation rates. So our purpose tonight, Dave and I, covers several areas. We want to start tonight, and I'm going to take over this part of the presentation, to bring trustees up to speed with the methodology that the Ministry of Education uses to release graduation rate data, and give you a sense as to the data that we've got in our access right now, and then how that information is going to be used in our initial plans to align it with the trustees' work plan goal for an increase in graduation rate excuse me, by 2% in 2017 from the 2016-17 baseline. So let me start, if I could, by reminding trustees that when we say graduation rate, we are in fact referring to students that have graduated with an Ontario secondary school diploma, because that's the criteria that the Ministry of Education uses in developing graduation rates. And without going into the details, of course, the requirements for an OSSD are quite specific, and I just grabbed this particular table from the Ministry's website, and it's certainly there for a reminder if you need it. But again, the main point on this slide was just to remind trustees that there are requirements for an OSSD, and that's the particular graduation certification that the Ministry uses for the purposes of identifying a graduate. And there is actually a very clear and specific process now on board's receipt of graduation rate data and information from the Ministry of Education. We receive, like all boards across Ontario, preliminary data specific to graduation rates through ONSYS, which is the Ontario Student Information System. And we don't receive that preliminary information until late October, early November each year. So in the information I'm going to share with you, you'll notice that we don't yet have specific graduation rates for last year, 2016-17. That information is still in progress, and we'll receive that preliminary information again towards late October, early November. And then in accordance with ministry processes, boards are allowed a period of time to ensure the accuracy of that information before the ministry releases those data in public forum, which happens traditionally in April or May each year. A reminder to trustees that the ministry actually only releases board-wide graduation rates. The ministry does not provide school-by-school graduation rates. That's work that we do internally, but the ministry data is actually specific to boards as a whole. And again, we do track our UCDSB graduation rates. We have a good history of that, and it's very good and important information for school and system improvement. Just a reminder that the development of school-by-school graduation rates and cohort tracking is actually quite a collaborative effort in our board. It involves the planning and research team. Our ONSYS team from the IT department is very, very helpful and critical in this information. Student success, of course, our teaching and learning team, and goes without mentioning our school teams, of course. I also want to point out that graduation rate and cohort tracking is an area of focus through the ministry's MISA initiative. MISA stands for Managing Information for Student Achievement. The Upper Canada District School Board is one of a number of Eastern Ontario boards that belongs to the Ottawa Region MISA network. And the Ottawa Region MISA group has been very instrumental in working with the ministry over the past number of years to help clarify methodologies for graduation rates, and the information that's shared across the province has also been developed through MISA to establish cohort tracking processes. So it's been very, very interesting working with that group. So now if I could, a little more detail around actual graduation rate methodology, because I think it's important that we all remember how these data are actually calculated. The actual grad rate methodology itself is actually not that complicated. Take, if you will, a group of grade 9 students, which we call a cohort for each year, and then you determine through ministry data how many of those students from that original cohort graduate with an OSSD. And we track that information through the help of ONSYS on a 4-year basis and a 5th-year basis. But it's usually the 5th year, how many students from that original cohort graduate after the 5th year is the number that's used for the board-wide graduation rate figure that you're going to see. What deserves maybe just a little bit more attention is the methodology used to actually identify that grade 9 cohort. And I want to help you to understand that because it's a little bit more detailed. When the ministry identifies students in that grade 9 cohort, there are some specific criteria that they use. So for example, the students identified in that initial cohort must be between the ages of 13 and 15 years as of December 31st each year. In the cohort, it only includes grade 9 students who are registered for the first time in a secondary school in Ontario. Another important point is the ministry includes in that original cohort any students that are enrolled at any time during the academic school year. So it's not the first day of school, it's not October 31st, it's any time during that point of time during that first year of school in high school that is included in that particular cohort methodology. So bear that in mind as we move forward. Oops. There we go. Okay. So I've shared with you the methodology that the ministry uses to calculate graduation rates based on, again, a cohort analysis perspective. What you're looking at in this chart is a comparison between the province as a whole graduation rates compared to the Upper Canada District School Board as a whole. The red bars indicate the province as a whole graduation rates, which you can see for the past 3 years. The latest year that the ministry had when it first started calculating graduation rates was in the 2013-14 school year, and at that time the province-wide graduation rate was 84%. In 2014-15, that increased to 85.5%, and the year that we have most recent data for was 2015-16, 86.5%. Again, that's in the blue or in the red bars. In the blue bars is the UCDSB rates. In 2013-14, 80.7%, 2014-15, 82.3%, and 2015-16, again, the most recent year that we have data for is 82% for the board as a whole. So what I want to do here is take you through a little bit more information about how we can take those board-wide grad rate figures and understand what student pathways are in place representative from these data. And what I'm showing you here, I'm going to start just with the graduates, okay? So you can see in this table you've got 2 years, you've got a cohort year, and you've got the 5th year of completion. So the cohort year, when the grade 9 was created, the cohort in 2010-11, their fifth year of completion would have been the 2014-15 school year. The number of students identified in that grade 9 cohort using the ministry's methodology for that time period was 2,216 students. Now you can see that after 4 years of that original cohort, there were 1,700 students that graduated with an OSSD, and by the fifth year that increased to 1,823. So if you take that 1823 as a proportion, as a percentage of that initial cohort of 2216, that's how you get the 82.3%. So that's how the ministry calculates graduation rate for our board as a whole based on that initial grade 9 cohort. So moving that forward to the 2011-12 cohort year, and again, their fifth year of completion would have been 2015-16, the year that we have the most recent data for. The cohort was 2,181 students, of which 1,788 students graduated with an OSSD during that time period, which is 82%. And again, the source for that particular information is the ministry's information reports on the grade 9 cohort. So that's the graduates, and you might be asking yourself, well, what happens to the students that don't graduate with an OSSD? That's the purpose of this table. So you can see if a student doesn't graduate with an OSSD and they're identified in that original cohort, there's 3 possible pathway destinations for them as identified by the Ministry of Education to define graduation rate. This is not a qualitative statement made on these students. It's simply categorizing them for the purposes of identifying graduation rates. So again, you can see here that 2010-11 cohort year graduated 2014-15 if they did in the fifth year. There's the 2216 students in that cohort. Now there's 3 possible destinations for students if they don't graduate with an OSSD. They might have left school without an OSSD or what we call a certificate. And there are 2 types of certificates, the Ontario Secondary School Certificate, which is the OSSC, or a Certificate of Accomplishment, which is a COA. So again, it's possible that some students might have left without an OSSD or a certificate, or they might still be in school after 5 years trying to achieve their OSSD or a certificate, right? Or they might have left with a certificate. So a couple of important points here, right? If they're still in school after 5 years and they get an OSSD, they're not included in the actual graduation rate calculation. Similarly, if they complete with the certificate, because it's not an OSSD, it's not included in the actual graduation rate numbers that we receive from the Ministry of Education. So you can see in this case that 2010-11 cohort year, there were 197 students board-wide for that year, for that time period, that left without an OSSD or certificate. There were 230 students that were still continuing on, seeking to achieve an OSSD or a certificate, and there were 17 students that finished school but with a certificate. And again, that's board-wide as a whole. And then the similar figures for 2011-12 cohort year, 216 students left with an OSSD or certificate, left without, 208 still continuing, and 22 students system-wide that left with a certificate. On this slide, we provide for you a school-by-school breakdown of graduation rates for the 2 years that we have access to these data. And I'll just leave it at that. It's available for you to see if you want to in more detail. Again, these were not developed by the ministry. These were developed internally with the help of our ONSIS team and student success teams. So just a couple more slides before I turn things over to Dave. We wanted to take this opportunity to remind again trustees how this relates to the trustee work plan goal of graduation rate for 2017-18. So this particular priority area of the trustee work plan falls under graduation rate. The critical success factor is resources and educational programs. And again, the specific goal is to increase graduation rate by 2% in 2017-18. And also specified in the trustee work plan is that the baseline would be the end of the 2016-17 school year. So because we haven't yet received the 2016-17 graduation rate data from the Ministry of Education, we've had to take an opportunity to try and estimate what it is we think we're talking about in terms of increase in number of graduates to meet this particular goal. And that's the purpose of this slide. So what we've done is we've made our best estimate, and we've determined that we think to reach this goal, assuming an 84% graduation rate, which would be 2% higher than 82%, which was the case last year, we are looking at an approximately 40 additional students that would reach their graduation goal in our school district as a whole. So in other words, we would have to maintain the 82%, and the additional 2% represents, we think, about 40 students total. So I wanted to put that for you so that you have some ideas, the context and the scope of the work that we're thinking about as we move forward, and provide you more information as it relates to the work plan and our ideas for actioning this this year for the results that would be measured for 2017-18. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dave, and he'll walk you through that.
Thank you, Phil, and good evening, trustees. Through you, Mr. Chair. One of the things I find particularly compelling about this particular goal is its specificity. This is not just hoping that we do a little bit better. This is not trying to hit some kind of vague mark. This is very specific. And to do that, we're going to need to identify the specific students that we need to target with our interventions this year. So I'm just going to give you a very high-level view of what that's going to look like starting out. So what we know right now, well, as Phil mentioned, we know approximately 40 additional students need to get across the line this year. That would represent 2% increase based upon last year's baseline graduation rate. And we know those students are now in their 5th year. They were in grade 9 in September of 2013. They're now in their 5th year of high school. We also know that many of those secondary students at risk of not receiving it at the end of this year are at TR Leger. They've done that transition. Not all of them. We estimate anywhere between 30-35% are now at TR Leger. And we also want to make sure that we understand that this is a longer-term strategy to increase graduation rates. That requires a K-12 approach. So while I'm going to be specifically talking about one particular cohort and very specific group of students, this really does apply to all students. And what we learn from this project will be able to move forward into future years. Just really quickly, some stats to consider. Dr. Alan King's double cohort study of 2001, 16 years old now, which makes me feel old because I remember this extremely well. And it was probably the first time that we really faced the fact that failure harms students. That if a student fails just one class in high school, they can very easily become a dropout statistic. And although I think we had some kind of intuitive knowledge at the time, this really forced the entire system to look at that fact. And not just blaming it on the students, which sometimes, quite frankly, we've done in this system, but look at ourselves and say, how could we then build an environment which more kids could be successful? So again, this is high level for next steps, but obviously to reach those students, we need to know who they are, where they are, and what they need. So this focus is very specific on this group of kids that are in their 5th year of school and they're at risk of not receiving an OSSD. We also know that many of these students, as I've mentioned, are at TR Leger, and we have to provide intensive support for students who are close to meeting that OSSD credit attainment. I'll give you a couple of examples of what that might look like in just a moment. So for the 2018-19 and beyond, we have to identify specific students who are at risk now. The earlier the better, and we know the earlier the intervention, the more effective that intervention is. So we're going to continue to look at credit accumulation in grade 9, grade 10, and beyond, as well as how our students are doing in K-6 and K-8. And the support for schools that have to be meaningful and personalized to give them opportunity for engagement in their schools. We ran a pilot at the end of last year, and I think this was mentioned before at this table. where we looked at the last 6 to 8 weeks of the year, and we did intensive support with those kids who just needed that little extra help. And in some cases, that was a teacher to sit beside them for an hour a day to assist them in completing assignments. In other cases, it was like a graduation coach, somebody from guidance who could sit down and say, this is how close you are, you need your community service hours, and here's how we can help you get that. We learned a lot from that pilot, and we're going to be extending it out into this coming year. So, our specific actions, which will become more focused and outlined as we go forward this year, is part of our work plan. And we mentioned here as the director's work plan, but it's all of our work. And certainly the entire senior team takes this on as a very serious commitment. So when we talk about data support for schools, who are they, where are they, what do they need? So just today, we were looking at data from the 2013 cohort. And we had data from each school. So we were able to call principals and say, we know every student who started with you in grade 9. Here's a particular student who's in their 5th year. They only have 21 credits. That means they don't look like they're going to graduate this year. Can you tell me about it? And in each case, the principal was able to say, absolutely, I know about that child. That student had to drop out because his girlfriend got pregnant, and he's now working a part-time job. So immediately, there becomes a strategy which we can engage that student. We have co-op programs. We have paid co-op opportunities. We have opportunities to do prior learning assessments. All of these things, which are legitimate and part of the Ontario Secondary School diploma program, we can engage, but we have to be specific for that particular child. So the principals have to be involved in this because they know their kids better than anybody. We have to integrate the work of student success teams. So when we talk about family of school success teams, what we've done really up until now is we've had very hard and dedicated work in our schools. We have student success teams in each of our high schools which are looking specifically at this group of students. We've never had an opportunity to meet as family of schools to talk about these kids, so that the good work that is being done, for example, at TIS, or the good work being done in Cornwall, at St. Lawrence, these people can actually get together and have a conversation about some of the strategies they're using to get kids over the line. Support for specific credit attainment needs on student path to graduate in 2017 and 18. So that means, what does it need when we talk about credit attainment? That's going to be different for every single student. So some of the data that we were looking at just this week, so for some students, they have their Ontario literacy test completion. So they have their literacy requirement, but they don't have their community service hours. They haven't even started. So we need to engage them now in September and not wait, as we have in past years, to April and May, when it's like we really need to get those 40 service hours. We have to start now. And finally, promote, share, and honor the success of all our student pathways. We have to include in all of this that there are students who are not working towards a diploma. They're working towards a certificate, which is an achievement and one that needs to be honored. But I should point out, however, that is a small section of the kids we are talking about. The majority of our kids are working towards a diploma, and we are working very hard to help them get there. This is our mission. We prepare all students for a successful life. And this really drives us moving forward with this particular goal. This is a compelling goal. This is a privilege to be able to be in a position to work on this goal. And I do look forward, and I know I speak for my colleagues, to come forward with updates on how we're proceeding on this. And at this time, we're prepared to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Dawes and Superintendent Coombs. I'm going to open that up to comments or questions. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Thank you. Why are you restricting yourself to 5 years? I go to a lot of TR Leger graduations, and I see probably cumulatively the largest graduating class within our board. I would say 50 to 60% of those kids, or students or graduates, are under the age of 21. The only difference is they may have taken 5, 6, maybe as many as 7 years to achieve that goal. And I think that if we extended it to include those success stories, that we would be probably above our 90% graduation goal, because those kids have not worked any less hard than the ones that walk across the stage at SFDCI or PDCI. They have simply had a few more hurdles to jump. And you alluded to one, and there's a great many others. And so I feel that by not including those students, we run the risk of making that seem like a second-class diploma. Also, is there an automatic shift of, say, a student is 19 years old, heading into his 6th year of secondary? He hasn't completed his requirements, so he hasn't done a victory lap. Is there an automatic shuffling over to alternative day school rather than allowing them to stay in the day school? So anyways, those are my questions. Thank you. Through the chair.
Thank you.
I'll take a crack at it first, if I may, Mr. Chair, and then Phil, if you can please follow up. So I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about those students that do cross the stage of TR Leger, sometimes later in life, and it's truly inspirational, and they are every bit as important to us. As a system, and I'm certainly around this table, I think we could all agree, this specific targeted goal is for increasing 2% over our graduation rate as it's defined by the ministry and that we've been working towards. So yes, it's very much targeted to these students, but the kind of things that we're going to be helping out these students doing now will be applicable for everybody. And in many cases, you know, for example, the prior learning assessment, which I think has been come forward to this table before, is used extensively for students who are over the age of 21. But those are also available to students under the age of 21 under certain circumstances. So I think some of the things we have learned in assisting and being flexible for students over the age of 21, we need to start applying more rigorously to those under the age of 21 that include this cohort. But this particular goal is very specific to a certain cohort, but you're quite right, we need to honor and apply these to everybody who comes through our system. Now, I'm sorry, the second question was?
Is there an automatic shuffling of a student that's, say, a senior student, say 19, 20 years old, that hasn't got his full credits and is probably heading into year 5 or 6 of his secondary career? Do we automatically shuffle them to alternative education?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for that. I would say that over time that we have done that less. That the advantage of TR Leger is that it is flexible, that students can go and work at their own pace, and many will go in and sometimes they can't attend for full days and they're working in a correspondence way. Automatically, no, absolutely not. We would expect any student under the age of 21 that lived in our district to be able to go to the public school of their choice, and that would be first and foremost what would be the default. But it's very interesting you should mention that. We do also have statistics about how many of those students in that 5th year are at TR Leger at different schools, and it does differ depending on where they live. So in some of our major urban centers, such as Cornwall and Brockville and Smith Falls, you'll see more students at in this 5th year cohort and beyond at TR Leger than in some of the more rural, and that could just be an accessibility issue, but there's a whole bunch of other questions to be asked around that as well.
Thank you. Justin McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question is, I just wanted to clarify that the ministry is providing data on graduation rate, and they're providing only the data October 31st? That's when they're releasing it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We received the preliminary data from the ministry through ONSIS towards the end of October and early November. Then we have an opportunity to clarify the accuracy of that information before it's applied by the ministry for public release of graduation rate data in April or May of each year. So again, we won't be receiving the preliminary results for last year, 2016-17, for another month or so, and then it would be publicly released in April or May.
So I understand the public release, but I wanted to clarify, we do track our own data, so we would know today what our graduation rate is based on our own numbers, because students have finished last year and we would know whether they've graduated or not since we handed out diplomas. So we do have that data, wouldn't we?
Through you, Chair. Appreciate that question. Yes, indeed. And in fact, we're trying to be very proactive in using the information that's available to us through the Student Information Management System to get an earlier jump on the information that we need to drive forward some of the strategies that we're talking about. So, for example, when Superintendent Coombs was speaking earlier about actually looking at some data right now as it relates to credit accumulation and graduation rate, that's what he's referring to. I will bring to your attention, however, it's still early days in this particular school year, so we're making a concerted effort to get data accuracy, but certainly within the next several weeks we'll be in a better position to access the Student Information Management System for a variety of uses.
Next question, Mr. Chair, if I may. I just wanted to pick up on Superintendent Coombs' point when he made reference to the number of students and in the percentage of them. I think you had said 30% are potentially within Tier Leger. You made a comment about, you know, so-and-so is not at school because I want to just clarify that's not all of our students that are not successful. That was just a point that you were trying to make, that many of our students are not successful, not as a result of the circumstances that you've indicated?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. And just trying to make the point that we are looking at specific students and their specific situations right now.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. So given that every circumstance is a little different, have we been able to drill down into our data within our schools to say, is there a specific course that's causing, is there a trend on a specific course that's causing an issue for many of our students? You know, I'm not looking at getting that data here, I think from the standpoint of your level. Or is it beyond that? I mean, are we able to identify some of those trends that may be causing some issues for students?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and that's an excellent point, because we do know that there are certain courses which seem to trip kids up. So, for an example of that would be the civics course, grade 10 civics, which is a 0.5 credit, and it's a requirement. We have one of the higher failure rates. This is province-wide, by the way, on that one particular course. Why that is, I could make a few guesses, but I won't at this table. But another course is the grade 11 math. We tend to see a lot of people falling down in that course as well. Generally, however, and just in our quick review of the data in the last couple of days, we are finding we've been very successful in the literacy course because of, if you, again, as you said, if you've had an attempt at the literacy test and you haven't been successful, you can take the course. So that's an area where we're actually doing quite well in. But you're right, we can drill down specifically to each course, and we can gauge the failure rate both at our schools and in our system.
And final, Mr. Chair?
Yep, and then we'll go on. We'll come back to you if you want, but do this one.
This is final. You threw me off now.
That was my plan.
So my last question was, you were concentrating on some of the students from TR Leger, but not just those students.
Yes.
If I look at it, right, we're looking at 40 students, I think was your number. I mean, if we take TR Leger out of the equation, it's 2 students per school, essentially, right, that we're looking at. So it's each school just getting 2 more students across the line gets us our 40. So that, you know, there's other ways to look at it, but I'm certainly thankful that we have this information and that we're moving forward to at least achieve that. I think, you know, some may think it's ambitious, some may think it's not ambitious enough, but I think it's a starting point, and this will be an opportunity for us to leap forward after we complete this year. So thank you for the information.
Thank you. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to presenters. As a follow-up to Trustee McPherson, and comments that we need to honor those other students who don't fit into the ministry criteria for graduation. Is it possible from here on in, when we're making a grad report, to put in a separate section that would include those students who do receive graduation outside of those 5 years? So we have truly a UCDSB graduation rate from all of the students who are potential in their graduation year.
Through you, Chair. I appreciate that question. I think it's a great idea. And yeah, we could get access to that information. I just, again, want to specify or clarify, the ministry has worked very hard to get the methodology that it has in place now. And there are some advantages, obviously, to having a common methodology. That's, again, and you're hearing this theme, not to set aside the goals and ambitions and achievements of other students that don't happen to meet that criteria. So there are all sorts of ways that we can present information to you that informs you on the work that's being done and what's happening to our students. So I think that would be a great way to format the information, and we'd be pleased to bring it to you in that shape.
Just before I turn it over to the director, I certainly understand what you're saying there, but when you look at the specific goal that we have set, it was very specific.
Correct.
This would be additional information just for us as a board, but doesn't directly relate to the work plan itself. Okay.
Just a way of honoring those
Yeah,
students.
I just wanted to make that clear, that the goal itself is the 2% based on a simpler structure that we have. But I understand exactly what you're saying. Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, in response to that question, it might serve the interest of the board to know that there is many ways to track success for all kinds of learners. There certainly is graduation rates would be one that the public's most acquainted with. But since there's several different credentials that students can earn up to the age of 21, there is perhaps an interest at some point to the next work plan that the board assigns to staff to ask in the spirit of what was just mentioned about whether we're looking at graduation rates or credentialing rates. So an example would be, we heard this evening on slide 13 that we have a number of students who are working on certificates of accomplishment or certificates of achievement. For certain families and for certain students, that is both an achievement and an accomplishment, and they deserve to be recognized and acknowledged. That's not how the board is asked to respond to the current view about success for students. We're looking at grad rates in 4 or 5 years with an Ontario secondary school diploma. But we do and may want to consider bringing to you at your direction at a next iteration of the board's work plan is credential rates, which then may give an even fuller picture to the full range of students that we serve and the range of success that they achieve and which their families celebrate, and the community should also feel proud.
And it would be something that would be extra, but it certainly would be of interest to the board, there's no question. Just moving on, thank you. Trustee McAllister.
Chair, I have a comment, a concern, and a question. My comment, of course, is that I, as a trustee, I fully support the 90% goal, and in this case, this year, the increase in 2%, because this is a question of student well-being, it's a question of student achievement, and really that's what we're all about. The concern that I have is that as minimal as the 2% seems to be, any particular school has to also maintain what they had, as well as increase it by 2%. That is a burdensome task. I don't think we should underestimate that. And in particular, I think the burden falls on the principals and the staff, the teachers who have to fulfill the needs of a credit. And if I could, I'd just like to put on my hat as a former teacher. I have student X in my class who, in spite of the new buzzword of triangulation, observation, conversations, and product, the assignments have not been completed. The attendance has not been sufficiently well done. And yet I have the onus and the burden to try and bring this student up, and which I would do. But I guess my concern is, first of all, is that I have a concern that this could become a wellness issue for our staff members. My second concern is I would like to see some specificity, to use your word, Superintendent Coombs. I like that. That's an old Joe Clark word. How, what are the financial, the time, and the human resources that we are going to be allocating to our schools and our staffs to achieve the particular goal that we have set?
Yes, I'm going to turn this to the director.
Mr. Chair, through you, and I'd like to begin, and then I'll invite Superintendent Coombs and Superintendent Dawes to speak to that. Trustee McAllister has landed on a key distinction here, and it's noted on slide 17 in the presentation where that arrow diagram was, which is the notion of 40 additional students or 2 students per school. The way of being able to visualize what that means in terms of reaching this commitment is predicated on the assumption that our graduation, the cohort that we're working with, have accumulated as much credits as the previous year plus 40. So what may in fact have to occur is that it could be larger than 40 students, or it could be less. It depends on what that particular cohort is entering in terms of this year, with the number of credits accumulated and what it will take to get them to meet their 30 credits for their Ontario Secondary School diploma. I respect and appreciate the observation that how do we do this, given that I don't know of any staff in any school that's approaching the work half-heartedly. What we do have is we have students that are presenting to us in ways that are different than their peers, sometimes in terms of the way that they learn, and sometimes in terms of their life circumstances, that together makes it difficult to participate or show what they know, learn, or do in a particular class. Part of the presentation talked about what the director's work plan would be, and one of the factors that we'll be bringing forward to the board at the end of the month is indicating that we have every intent of using all the tools that are at our disposal that enables students to show us how they learn. That includes building a greater assessment capacity for our students. The folks in the room know that what most of that conventional assessment is, which is a product to turn something out, some kind of output, and to have that assessed against a standard, a performance standard of whether that meets a level 1 level of success or higher. Certainly the assessment standards are about, our assessment range includes observation and conversation. And certain disciplines have really mastered that, and we need to learn how those disciplines do that. French language and the arts are 2 examples of where they have looked at observation and conversation and have been able to provide some type of assessment that honors student knowledge and skill. We also need to acknowledge that the personalization of instruction does come with costs, but the board has also provided us with resources through a surplus budget that will allow us to come back and speak to how we plan to devote resources from that surplus to move students ahead. And we heard loudly and clearly that that was the expectation of the board last spring when the surplus budget was passed. And we also recognize that making that connection visibly and publicly to our communities and to the board helps us to understand how we did it this year and can we do that again. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Coombs and Dawes to see if they have any other comments.
Thank you, Director, and through you, Mr. Chair. And actually, it's a very good point that you mentioned, Trustee McAllister. One of the things that perhaps is lacking in our presentation is the application of resources to make this happen. And I think sometimes we think if we just say, let's just try more or try harder or work longer hours, that somehow we're going to get a different result. So there is, I think the point, that we're trying to make is that this strategic application of resources, so not just expecting people to do more with the same, but giving additional resources, and that could be in the form of additional personnel. It could be in the form of additional resources such as online learning or other kinds of learning resources, but it does mean more resources strategically applied to specific cohort of kids. And from that, hopefully, what we will learn is what works and what doesn't, and how we can apply that going forward. But you're quite right that there are additional monetary resources associated with this.
Thank you. Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Thank you. And I just want to take off from what Stephen was saying and about, no, it goes like this. Slide 21, which is the next steps. What's new on that we're going to try? 'Cause to me, I thought we were doing all that.
Is this the one? Sorry.
Yeah, well, both of those, I mean, essentially. I mean,
Sure,
it
yes.
Continued, I see a lot of that.
So, and I thank you through you, Mr. Chair. This is intentionally slightly vague in that the intention was not to drill down on specific tactics that we're going to be using, and in fact, many of those tactics could change and shift throughout the year as we learn more about these students. Some of the things that we haven't done in the past, we've never drilled down to this level of specificity. To enable us to look at one cohort specifically, not just, we do very good job of looking at the kids that are in front of us. So when I was a principal, I could tell you every single student that was in my grade 12 graduating class and what they needed and what we were doing to apply to that. What we haven't done, I think, well as a system is track those students who are no longer at that home school, that perhaps are at alternative learning or perhaps have completely disengaged and are working at a job somewhere. We also, and I'll give you an example, if I may, from last springtime. One of our schools in our board did a targeted intervention on 3 students with one particular teacher who was a teacher, but was also a coach, if I can use that term, right? Like a graduation coach. And many of our kids, they need a math teacher, but they also need a facilitator. They need somebody to be able to assist them in working out some of the mechanics of their day-to-day lives. I don't think we've done that systemically. We've done that, if I can use the term, we have pods of excellence where we've done really great things with kids. We have not done this in the kind of systematic approach with real data tied to each and every child. I think that's what's different with this. But I do appreciate that as the months go on, that we need to bring further tactics forward saying this is what's working, and perhaps even more importantly, this is what's not working. Maybe we need to stop doing this to be able to get a better result.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Armour.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions, and you touched on it briefly. Why the ministry doesn't release the grade 9 data for 2013-2014 until the end of October? Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, the 2013-14 grade 9 cohort would be the year 5 students that would graduate at the end of this year. Okay. That's correct. We don't have preliminary data indicating our graduation rate as a board from last year until later this fall.
We do track that through internally.
Through you, Chair, yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
And I have couple questions, another 2 questions, if I may, Mr. Chair. Why is it that we track 5-year graduation? It's a loaded question. Why?
Through you, Chair, I'll take on a loaded answer. It's the methodology that the ministry provides to boards to calculate graduation rates.
So is that something that could change?
In my opinion, no. The ministry has worked very hard to get to this point in its journey. It's now got, as you can see, 3 years of history to work from, and I personally don't see it changing. But
good. I like to be prepared.
We'll let the director jump in, and they'll come back to your next question.
Mr. Chair, through you, a bit of a history lesson. When the new secondary school curriculum came in 1999, it was expected that all students would pass the line at the 4th year.
Okay.
And in 2003, 2004, the ministry softened that position, recognizing that there were a wide range of learners who took the 5th year because they also wanted to have a more well-rounded diploma experience and learning experience. And they also recognized that there was also learners within any given cohort that needed more time and would not take necessarily a full timetable, but were still graduation bound. I think those were 2 very key acknowledgements from a government at the time that had a particular view of students and the learner, and was perhaps a little bit more narrow than what was really the reality of the kind of students we worked with.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to have just one more question. One more. Oh, yeah, sorry, you won, and then Trustee
Sure,
McDonald.
ready.
Sure,
Thank
go
you.
ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Just a comment on slide 20. You indicated that failing a course, you're less likely to graduate. And I've read the study that you quoted, and it does say the best indicator of dropout rates is the loss of key credits in grade 9 and 10. And so I would hope, as an organization, that we read further in and that we're focusing on those key courses that he quotes in that stat. And so I would just hope that that's happening. Okay.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address 2 points that were raised during the questions and comments from trustees. I want trustees to understand that this is not an indication of students. This is an indication of the board when we talk about graduation rate. It's not honoring students. It's about determining how successful we are as a board on getting a percentage of our students to graduate within the ministry's guideline. Honoring students is done in a different way. And if we start to say we want to honor all of our students and we start to water this down, then we've really diminished the idea that we want to be successful to a certain point over a certain period of time with a percentage of our students. I think we need to be careful of how we want to address this. The 90% graduation rate is a key result indicator for this board. It has been for some time. The measurement that we've heard from Superintendent Dawes, based on the ministry criteria, is over a 5-year period. And it's indicative upon us as a board to say we want 90% or whatever the number might be to graduate within that period, and then put the resources in place to make sure it happens. Not to say we want to give you another year, another 2 years, another 3 years to be successful. We want to have you successful in the period of time that's expected for you to be in school, so that you can go out now and be competitive in the environment that you're going into, not taking an additional amount of time if we need it. If you need it, that's great. We'll work with you. However, it's a measurement for the board and a success rate that we've established. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the budget and resources aspect. The budget and resource aspect, it's not part of this discussion. I agree it's important, as Trustee McAllister said, but I want to remind trustees that where we are. We have set a board work plan. The director has set a director's work plan. We've also established a budget. The expectation is when we have a board work plan, that the director then establishes a budget to go out and achieve the results that we've expected. It's not for us to come and analyze the amount of effort that's required to achieve that result when we get the information presented to us. That time to discuss about the resources or the requirements for additional funds, human resources as well, is at budget time. That's the director's job to tell us how it's going to task the system if we go and move forward with this, not after we've got the barn door open and the horse is out. So I think we need to be cognizant of how we set things moving forward in our path, that we have a board work plan, we have a director's work plan, we have a budget, and then we have the individual tasks that are coming back to present to us. If we need adjustments from that, I expect the director to provide that information to us, but not for us to analyze whether we aren't meeting the goal in this particular item as we get information from months or weeks moving forward. At the end of the year, when we have budget moving into next year, we'll talk about the next work plan. But I don't want to muddy the waters about talking about specific budgets when we've passed the major budget for the board, understanding that the director knew what was required to be accomplished.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for that presentation, but I think it's also an opportunity to thank everyone at the back of the room, because I think there was a comment that was made very early. It's all of us are working to make this happen, whether we're in high school or whether we're in the elementary panel. Our job is to help our kids get across that line, and we can't do it without you. We can't do it without your staff, and we thank you so much for listening to this, because I think it's a very important conversation that you listen to. You can see where we as a Board of Trustees are asking the director to go. So that becomes his work plan, it becomes the senior team's work plan, and ultimately it becomes yours. But I think it's just something you want to do every day anyways. So I thank you for being here and listening to that part of the conversation. Thanks. Okay, moving on to the next item is our annual update in the SAL, Supervised Alternative Learning. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Tim Mills, and he's going to invite Principal of our Safe Schools, Rob Currier, forward as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Along with Principal of Safe Schools, Mr. Currier, and on behalf of the SAL Committee, it's our pleasure to present the Supervised Alternative Learning 2016-17 school year report to the Board of Trustees. As noted in the previous presentation on graduation rate, as a board we prepare all students for a successful life. There are many pathways to success at the school level, and SAL is a system level support that we provide for students ages 14 to 17. So just as an introduction to trustees, we're committed to providing learning opportunities for all students, and we recognize that alternative learning is something that's required for students to get on a pathway to success, whether it's for a certificate or an OSSD, a graduation diploma. It is for students aged 14 to 17. The legislation there, you see the Education Act 37410 came into being in 2010. But as a board, we're only completing our second year of SAL, so it was the decision of the board not to have a SAL program or committee until a few years ago, and we'll share some successes and statistics with you as we go along. And a reminder of, they're not necessarily renewed goals anymore with the ministry's goals, but achieving excellence, which is getting students on successful pathways. Two big ones in the middle there, ensuring equity and promoting well-being, are definitely goals of SAL, and enhancing public confidence. And a successful SAL program is important as we provide pathways. The intention of SAL, and you'll see in the statistics that Mr. Currier shares with you, is it's for a very small segment of the student population. And we want students to remain in their home school. We want to re-engage students who are 14 to 17 years old with significant attendance issues. And we've highlighted that middle bullet there to be offered after other retention strategies are unsuccessful. You heard many of the student success strategies in the previous presentation, which can include credit recovery, credit attainment, intervention by system staff, and different pathways at the school level. Students excused from full-time attendance by the SAL committee participate in many different activities, which include what's listed there and maybe others. Credit or non-credit courses, some training, employment preparation, of which we've had some students do that, volunteering, and a big component is certainly counseling. Students follow a learning plan that we monitor as a SAL committee, and we look at them regularly. So just to restate, we want to maintain a connection by supporting students with a caring adult. Graduation is important, and we want to keep the student connected to their home school. And you saw some of the reasons why in the early presentation, that when a student leaves their school for various reasons, it becomes difficult in the pathway to get them back in and get a transition back into school. So our SAL committee membership at the board level is myself and or Rob Currier, who will speak shortly, as the designate, trustee Don Cram, and we have a community representative, Annette Larnger, who works with Lauren Crest Youth Services in the Cornwall and SDNG area. We meet monthly as a committee, and we review all referrals from our secondary and or elementary schools. We make recommendations to the SAL plan provided and approve or not the new SAL referrals. So as far as statistics go, to highlight 2016-17 and some other provincial statistics, I'll turn it over to Mr. Currier.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Through you, Chair. So last year we had a total of 15 different students participate in SAL. We had 13 students in the first semester from 5 different schools and 13 students in the second semester, again from 5 different schools. So just to kind of clarify, so there were 11 students that were in SAL in both semesters, and then 2 students in each separate semester. This is just an age distribution again. You'll see the majority of the students were 16 years old. So again, first semester we had 7 students that were 16, and then the second semester 6 students. So the nice thing that I like about this is that we only had 1 student that was 14 in each case. So at least they're giving grade 9 a shot. Trying. So again, Tim mentioned earlier some of the SAL activities: employment, volunteering, counseling, workplace training, or other courses. It could be parenting courses, things like that. I would like to highlight the workplace training. We've had some great partnerships in Cornwall and Brockville and Perth with our employment agencies. It's called the Youth Connections or Job Connections program, where the students will go for 2 to 3 weeks of training in-house, and then the employment agency sets them up with a job placement. And so it's been really, really beneficial to our SAL students, and not only learning some new job skills, but also that real important experiential learning. In the credits attempted, so in first semester we had 10 credits out of 31 credits attempted for a 32% success rate. In second semester, we had 11 credits earned out of the, gosh, my eyes are bad, 38, thank you, for a 29% success rate. Now that aligns fairly closely with the province average. In 2015-16, the province average was 33%. Now, there's one thing that we're going to do this year to try and increase that credit accumulation. And we're going to really encourage our SAL students to work on some of the credit recovery opportunities they have from their previous school or from their current school. Also, try and encourage them to take part in co-op, or again, experiential learning, or again, that workplace training we talked about. And if they do take part in some experiential learning or workplace training, we'd like the schools to work with them and maybe align them with a grade 10 course called Discovering the Workplace, or a grade 12 course called Navigating the Workplace. And hopefully those expectations, or most of them, will align with those 2 courses, and they'll be able to get granted credits for those one or more of those courses. In conclusion, so the Supervised Alternative Learning Program, again, is one of many programs that our board offers, and it strives to provide many pathways to success. One thing that we're going to start doing is we're going to start trying to track the graduation rate of students that were in SAL at one time or another, just to see the long-term effect it may have had on some of our students. Thank you.
So just to conclude, I want to thank Trustee Cram, Rob and Annette couldn't be here tonight for all of their hard work on the SAL committee on behalf of our schools, the communities, and you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for comments or questions. From the councillor.
Several questions. The first one is, can you tell me how many students, or is it too early to tell, how many students are in semester 1 in the SAL program now?
Currently we have, through you, Chair. Currently we have 4 students registered in SAL for semester 1.
My second question relates to the credit accumulation. It doesn't seem very high. Could you explain that to me, why it is not? And
Sure.
why province-wide it is not either?
Through you, Chair. It's an excellent question, Trustee McAllister. So a lot of these students are coming to us, and again, it's one of the last programs that we're going to try with these kids. All the schools have tried many different things with them, and it's not working. So for one reason or another, a lot of these students have high anxiety, and it's just a matter of them coming to school is a big success. So again, success rate is measured differently for all of our kids, especially for these students. For them to even earn 1 or 2 credits a year is a huge success. And I think it's some of those kids they may not graduate in the 5 years that we're hoping to graduate in. It may take the 7 to 10 years, again, that Trustee McPherson mentioned earlier with our TR Leger graduation, for them to graduate due to some of the barriers that they're trying to overcome. So that I believe is one of the main reasons. Just they have too many barriers at this time in their life, and SAL is just helping them to kind of overcome some of those barriers so they can return to regular school or return to TR Leger perhaps, and eventually graduate from our board.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Trustee Cartner.
Just a question. I noticed that you have 5 schools that the students go to. Is it because they're offering the training that these students need, or are these kids only from those schools, or are they from neighboring schools and they come there? I know we try to keep them in their own schools, but you need resources and people.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the students that are, or the schools that are identified there are students that attend those specific schools, but the program itself, whether they're gaining credit or going out into the community with an employment program or doing counseling or volunteering, they're doing it in maybe the local community where their school is. But the program itself may not be located in that specific school. The SAL program itself is available to all secondary schools, and those are the students that were referred. There could be many different reasons for that, some schools are smaller and some schools are larger. Some may have students they want to refer, or they're handling it. It's kind of, we're at a system level with SAL, and it's a system level program. So it's not always something that every school will access or need every year. It may be 6 different schools next year, or 10 different schools next year.
Just I'm very pleased to see this program working.
We are too.
Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up to Trustee McAllister, with the 4 students in SAL, during the program as well, they have to renew the program every year, and they have to be registered in the school. So if they haven't registered yet for this particular school year, and we haven't renewed their SAL, the numbers would be lower than it would be 2 months from now when people have registered and taken the program.
Thank you. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Just a question of, I guess, how it works. Does the student that's in the SAL program, they do not report to the school each day? Or is there a contact person? Like, it's not like a regular day student where you go in and do your 4 semesters, 4 classes a day, and you go home and hop on the bus. So what does the average day for a SAL student look like? I'm just curious as to what it would look like compared to day school, and through the chair.
Through you, Chair. Great question. So the SAL plan, each student has a unique SAL plan that's specifically designed for them and to meet their needs. So the average, I'm not sure if I can tell you the average one, but I would say in some cases students may go to their regular high school once a day for an hour, and then in the afternoon, that could be morning, afternoon, they could be going to their counseling sessions, they could be going to a workplace or something else. Some kids will volunteer at various locations as well. So I would say on average that, some kids are going to their school once or twice a week, I'd say on average for our SAL students. And the great thing about that is, again, and it was mentioned earlier, that it keeps them connected to their school. So when they're ready to return, they still have that connected person. And one other thing is each SAL student has a primary contact person from their home school, and that's the person they deal with regularly.
Thank you. Trustee Armour.
Just a quick question, Superintendent Mills, if I can direct it to him. How do our staff know about SAL? And how does that process work? So a student is identified? Maybe you can explain it to me.
So, through you, Mr. Chair. So staff are well aware. We would send out a memo, we already have at the beginning of the year, with outlining the program to principals and vice principals and guidance staff, and they would share that with their staff. But I can assure you that these people in the back here are also well aware of the students that are facing challenges, and we will often get calls and or emails, whether it's principal, courier, or I, about candidates for SAL, and they'd like us to consider, and then we refer them back to the process.
One other question through your chair, if that's all right. Do students know about it? Or is it something that's recommended to students if they're going through an issue?
Through you, Chair, we would recommend it to
You
students.
would recommend it, okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing there are none, I thank you very much for the presentation. Trustees, I'm going to ask us if we can get a motion for a 10-minute break so we can try to get the telephone lines reconnected so Trustee Swan can join us. Can I get a motion for that? Trustee Carpenter, Trustee McDonald, all in favor? Okay, if we can be back by 5 after 8, and we'll continue the meeting. Thank you.
graduating next week.
Smart people. Okay. Okay, I apologize for my voice tonight, but I don't. Man cold. All right, so I have a report from private session. This is the Committee of the Whole, June the 21st, 2017. I have two motions. The first is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution PS 217 June 21st-004 carried in the Committee of the Whole session under agenda item D.5 June the 21st, 2017. Do I have a mover for that? Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Armour. And I'll ask you to cast your votes on that, please. And that carries. Thank you. Trustee Swan. Thank you. Okay, and the second motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution PS 2017 June 21st-005 carried in the Committee of the Whole private session under agenda item D.5 June the 21st, 2017. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Karkner. I ask you to cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. The next item on the list is going to result in two motions. Director Dave McDonald, do you want me to put the motions on the floor first? Okay. So there are two motions, and I'll turn it over to Trustee McDonald to talk about the Ontario Public School Board membership. So the first motion is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the Ontario Public Board Schools Association and the work it does on behalf of the English Public School Board, and that the 2017-18 membership fee increase of 6.87% is further supported. I have a mover for that, Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee McAllister. And the second motion is that the chair of the Upper Canada.
Vote on it.
Well, we should have a discussion on it first? Yeah, we're gonna have a discussion. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to. I'm gonna turn it over to Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to highlight a couple of things. There is an attachment in the agenda. It's a letter that was sent to all trustees of the Upper Canada Board on behalf of OPSPA, highlighting the things that OPSPA does to support not only Upper Canada District School Board, but all English public school boards across Ontario. They are a representative of all those English public school boards, and they're governed by their members. So they certainly, OPSPA takes their lead to support and fulfill the mandate for students, parents, and staff and community. Some of the highlights that I wanted to touch upon, I won't go through the whole thing, but certainly the work that OPSPA does around school board bargaining, collective bargaining act. Tremendous amount of work over the last few years about representing English public school boards across the province when it comes to negotiating those contracts with all the bargaining partners that we do have. As well, advocacy work, obviously, on behalf of the boards, the different legislation that is going before legislation, our provincial parliament. OPSPA is a founding member of the Coalition for Children and Mental Health, something that is very near and dear to many of us, but certainly Trustee McAllister, who represents the board on many of those angles. It's a recurring session that we would have on a every 2-year basis, that we would bring together the minds of the province, well, maybe more outside of the province, but to talk about things and initiatives that we can do within the province for children and youth mental health issues. OPSPA is also very active within the labour market partnership, as a grant was provided by the Ministry of Advanced Education. OPSPA also has done a tremendous amount of work over the last few years around Indigenous Trustees Council. It's changed its name over a course of a couple of years. However, there's a lot of work that's been done to ensure that we have a curriculum coming through within the province that is more focused on even just an awareness across the province around Indigenous students and Indigenous issues. Obviously, we talked about a well-being engagement paper from time to time, and certainly there's a information that you can click on and get those reports. One of the key issues, though, is the work that OPSPA does to support trustees and in the professional development of trustees, and that comes around the Public Education Symposium, the Labor Relations and HR Conference, the AGM, the different sessions that are provided to trustees to help engage them, educate them in fulfilling the duties of a trustee back at their individual boards. OPSPA does a lot of work around many different areas that do save money for boards in general. OPSPA is the lead agency on behalf of the Canadian School Board Association around copyright legislation, and also OPSPA is the lead, I guess, or the main component of an arm's length corporation, the Ontario, butcher this name, but it's the Coalition on Energy something or other. And on the last page, there's two things that I wanted to highlight for trustees. It shows the savings that OPSPA has been able to achieve on behalf of Upper Canada. And one of them is around copyright legislation. It's the fair dealings requirements about what boards have to pay to I can't think of the association right now, but the authors of the content that would receive, yeah, there you go, so they would receive the information or receive the benefits of individuals using their material. The other thing is around energy savings, and it's not so much that they monitor the savings, but they are the ones, the coalition is the agency that goes to the Energy Board hearings and argues for reductions or not the significant increases that the energy companies are looking to do and get increases for. So primarily around gas and electricity in the province. So our annual fee right now is $61,000 for OPSPA. But the savings just on copyright alone is $62,000, and energy costs around $95,000. It doesn't equate, or we don't have significant numbers around the benefit of the PD that is provided to trustees, but it's immeasurable. When trustees do attend these sessions, there's a lot of valuable information that trustees can pull back and work with our board. So, Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to support the increase. We've been asking as a board for a number of years to see an increase for OPSPA's fees. OPSPA has not raised fees for, I would probably go as far as 8 to 10 years. They've been operating on a shoestring budget for forever. There's been a freeze on fees and any adjustments, and typically what would happen is if your fees were based on your enrollment, if your enrollment went up, you'd pay more. If your enrollment went down, you'd pay a little less. And over the last few years, our membership fees have been frozen, so we haven't had the reduction that we normally would have, but we've also supported that maintenance or that the maintaining of those fees that we've been paying. So moving forward, this increase will certainly support the work that OPSPA does, and I can assure you that at the board of directors and in the committees that OPSPA or Upper Canada trustees sit on, we'll be holding the feet of our OPSPA administration to the fire to ensure that every dollar that we do have is spent to assist boards and to move the agenda forward across Ontario.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions, Trustee McAllister?
Chair, I echo each and every one of Trustee McDonald's comments. For a long time, I felt that OPSPA has been underfunded by the member boards because I think OPSPA is a very strong representative body. And if we pass this motion, I would ask that it be circulated to all boards as a show of
Okay. I think that's coming out in the second motion. Trustee Bill McPherson?
Perhaps this should be viewed as an amendment. I think I'm getting your call. I would like to see the sum total of the fee mentioned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee McDonald?
Well, I would just indicate that, so what we're doing tonight is just to talk about the increase and support the increase. In January of every year, we would typically approve the membership to OPSPA, and at that point, we would also have the fee would be associated to the following year, the school year, so that would be for the 2018, 2019. Am I correct in the numbers? In January, we approved the following year's membership fee? Or yeah. So tonight, we're not really, we're already in into the organization. And I also want to point out that the legislation also allows or provides GSN funding that would pay for OPSPA membership fees. There's a specific amount within the GSNs that covers our OPSPA membership fees.
Okay, and just looking back, there's been no increase since 2009. So we're not voting on the actual amount of money. We're just looking at basically the idea behind this and supporting the OPSPA as an organization and the work they do and their need for an increase. Trustee Bill McPherson.
At the end of the letter, it has an attachment, invoice for 2017-2018 OPSPA fees for a sum total of $61,161. So therefore, we're going to, have we already allocated that money? Or is this for the coming year?
That's the coming year. This is the coming year.
So we are being invoiced.
We will be, what was the date? It's being invoiced, but wouldn't be approved and passed by us until, what's the date, was it? It's in January.
So we're approving an increase tonight, but we haven't necessarily approved the payment, even though the invoice is attached to this letter.
Well, right now, we're just talking about the intent behind the increase and supporting the increase. Trustee McDonald?
Just for clarification, if I may, as I said earlier, there's this specific legislation in the Board Administration and Governance line on the GSNs that pay for the memberships to OPSPA, and boards get allocated that amount by the province, and so it's a flow through basically that the money would come to the board and it goes through to the to OPSPA, and at this point, last Superintendent Barkley is not it's not going to be anywhere outside of the requirement that's in the Board Administration and Governance. We were fully funded for the membership fees.
That's correct.
We are. Okay, so basically tonight we're, by passing this motion of supporting the rationale behind the 6.87%, indirectly we're approving the invoice, but we're not doing that at this particular point. We're just looking at the intent behind it. I know what you're saying, Trustee McPherson, I get it.
But, okay, what is going to be our final amount? 61,161 plus 6.78%?
That is.
Yes, yeah, go ahead and help us.
So the increase, so the amount for 16-17 was $15-16 was $57,228. 16 and 17 was 61,161. Sorry, 17-18 was 61,161. So there's a difference. The increase from last year to this year is $3,900.
6.8%.
Which is 6.87%. So the 17-18 is 61,161. The one before that was 57,228.
And before that?
And before that,
57.
it was the same before that. So we haven't really had an increase. In 2009, 2010, it was $60,047. And it hasn't changed since, and then it actually dropped to $57,228.
Because of our enrollment.
So the difference between the 57,228 and the 61,161 is the increase of 6.87%.
And it's been made clear that it's fully funded. Okay. Trustee McPherson, okay?
I'm still confused, but go ahead.
So, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So in January of this year, the OPSPA membership fees would have been passed for the 2017-18 year. So come January 2018, the board will look at what the fee will be for the 2018-19 year, which will come, it's always the year ahead, to look at the budget for the following.
So we are not approving tonight
No.
the payment of $61,161. We're only supporting the concept
That's
of an increase in next year's levy.
Yep.
So the invoice they've attached here isn't due until January.
We're just voting on the intent for now. Okay? Okay, so I have a motion on the floor, moved by Trustee McDonald and Trustee McAllister, and I'll ask you to cast your votes on that. And that, Trustee Swan and Trustee Jacobs. Yes, thank you. Thank you, that carries. The second motion is that the Chair of the Upper Canada District School Board send a letter to member boards indicating our support of the work of the Ontario Public School Board Association, OSPA, and the justified 2017-2018 membership fee increase. Moved by Trustee McDonald. Trustee Cartner? Do you want to address that, or it's pretty much been addressed? Any comments or questions about that? I'll ask you to cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee McDonald, for that. Okay, moving on to the Director. Do you have any remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. It was a very smooth and a very effective startup to the new school year. We were very pleased to have our new administrative staff in place that were there to open the schools and welcome our students. We're certainly appreciative, as you heard at the start of the meeting this evening, for all the staff that had prepared the schools to receive students. The chair and I had the pleasure of being out in the North Dundas area at Winchester Public School and North Dundas District High School, and we were so well welcomed and warmly welcomed, and we were treated like anybody else who was part of the community that day. We were quite made to feel quite comfortable, and the staff were totally student-centered in both those sites, and we can certainly tell you that that students had a great day. As well, I wanted to mention, Mr. Chair, that that we were pleased to be able to accomplish our first leadership meeting last month, and many of the trustees were there as part of the August LLMA session. I want to thank the members of the board who had the opportunity to arrange their schedules to join us that morning. Your presence there speaks to the team spirit that we're trying to bring to leading and learning in the district, and it was not lost on all the principals and vice principals who were there. And many people commented on the energy and the kind of the positive vibe that was part of the time together. And I especially want to thank Superintendent Allen and her staff, who helped to put in advance in the late spring all those measures that made it such a great day. So it was really a great kickoff to a new year, and I'm again very appreciative of the members of the board who were able to join us that day.
Thank you. The biggest challenge for me the day when we were in Winchester Public School was getting you away from the blocks. I mean, the man was right down playing in the kindergarten room. It was hard to get him out of there, but it was really a night. Kindergarten kids, you gotta love them. Oh my God, you know, they just touch your heart. I said a lot of what I wanted to say in the very beginning because I thought it was important that our administration goes back and tells the staff what we truly feel. I also have to come off the summer and be able to look around the table and see the new faces. I'm excited to see two new faces. equally excited to see two new faces on the senior team, because I know that it's, you know, we're a family. When we come here, we've got work to do, and we do work together. We come at it from a different angle, but we certainly work together. I'm excited about what this year has in store for us. It also excites me to see the board table almost filled. And Wendy, you're an inspiration to all of us. I can't tell you how much it means to me to see you there. It really does. It means a lot. I'm looking forward to a great year, and I welcome everybody back. And I probably won't be singing tomorrow night. I hate to break my fans' hearts. Okay, I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole, moved by Trustee Bill McPherson, seconded by, come on, help me out, gang. Trustee Richards. Okay, just a show of hands, we don't, okay, thank you. And now I need a motion that the Committee of the Whole move into private session, moved by Trustee Armour, seconded by Trustee Richards. Again, show of hands. Thank you. We're going to move into private session. We'll just give a second for the phone lines to get killed, or the